going to pass over to Dom, who's going to take you through a keynote and set up the day. Thank you very much. Over to Dom.
Good morning, everyone. Is my voice coming through? Perfect. My name is Dominic Black. I'm Director of Research Services at Cavell, and Matt's very kind intro of me. Have been here 11 years looking at the research side of the business. And today you're going to kind of take you through some of our latest stats and what we're seeing in the market and how that's all changing. For those who've been here for a number of years and looking at our events, you would probably come to the European VoIP Summit first, which we hosted back in 2015. And when we're looking at that market, we're really looking at that transition from on-prem to cloud and how that was happening on the PBX side. As we started moving further on and the market started maturing a bit more, started looking at kind of the UCaaS side as businesses were bringing more services in, not just that replacement of the PBX, and we transitioned to the Cloud Comm Summit. We've now rebranded to Cavell Summit, and one of the reasons we did that is really we're seeing a lot more services being offered by the service providers out there. We're seeing vendors offering many more solutions and bringing those together, and really the business models are changing very rapidly, which is why we've seen that transition, and our businesses have transitioned with that as well. If we look at the UCaaS market and penetration rates of where we were and where we're going to be in 2028, what you can see is there's some markets at the moment, the UK, Netherlands, some of the Spain, Portugal, where the markets are pretty well developed from a UCaaS perspective and moving to cloud-based telephony. At the moment, the market's around 37% penetrated in Western Europe, so it's still a huge opportunity that we're going to see over the next 5 years where the market's going to grow, migrating to cloud solutions, so huge opportunity for the market out there. Some of the biggest markets in Europe, France and Germany, still penetration rates still very low, so where we see a lot of providers we're speaking to looking at going into is those markets and looking what they can do there. However, we have seen over the last 12 months a reduction in ARPU, a reduction in margin as well from a lot of the providers. 44% say they've seen reductions. So there's big challenges for the providers out there of what they can do to be successful in the future as those margins are getting eroded. We're seeing that in the enterprise space with Microsoft Teams starting to really change the business model for a lot of those businesses and service providers. But also we're seeing a transition to other solutions in the SME where they're more and more looking at mobile solutions and things like that. We're also seeing a big change in the channel. So the channel market has gone from really a resell model. Now we're seeing insufficient sales support coming through. We're seeing deal registrations becoming more complicated. We're seeing residual spiffs and the margins people can make on selling through the channel also changing as well. And this is really starting to put some pressure on the channel of what they can sell in the future. When we look at the services sold alongside UCaaS, generally from our channel insight service, it's IT services, it's around security, connectivity, and Microsoft as well. What's fascinating is those lower services, things like CCaaS, SD-WAN, CRM, mobile, under 26% of all of the channel providers that we're speaking to are selling those services. So a huge opportunity to sell those services through the channel, as a lot of them are now looking at what they can sell alongside. When we're speaking to service providers as well, what their biggest challenges to the future is, AI comes up so strongly. And not just around what they're doing with AI, but how that's going to change the workforce in the future. What are they looking to build? Where are they going to use all their, what are their staff going to do in the future? Are we going to start seeing a reduction in the number of actual available market? When we look at the total available market across Europe, we're seeing it decline by about 9% over the next 5 years as more and more people stop using phone system and start using just collaboration, but also AI we're seeing replacing a huge number of people, especially in places like contact center. Klarna announced this year that they're cutting, I think, 600 contact center agents across the board, moving everyone to virtual agents, and huge changes I think are going to come in the next 5 years with AI in terms of employment. We're also seeing a big focus around regulatory changes. So AI in Europe, the AI Act was released earlier this month, really changing how AI is going to be adopted across that. We've seen stir shaken in the US, really change how businesses are, how carriers are going to rate calls and make sure they're getting into the right places. We're seeing skill shortages across the industry from developers, from salespeople, from marketing, and big challenges coming through there of how they're going to get the right people into their service provider businesses. And we're seeing huge macroeconomic changes. Across 2024, there's 65 countries going into general elections. On top of that is the European Union elections as well. I think it's 49% of the world's population are going to be voting in a general election this year. It's huge macroeconomic change over the next year, and we've got to be resilient to how that change is going to impact our industry. One thing that we've seen, though, when we speak to service providers, when they're looking at what they can do to be successful in the future, 62% said they're going to look at diversifying their portfolio. And that's moving away from just selling voice services, maybe into contact center, into messaging. We're going to touch on a few of those areas as we go through. Oh. Or we're going to not. Oh, there we go. And 92% of the survey respondents we spoke to say they're now selling and bundling one or more services when they're selling their solutions together. So more and more is moving from just a point sale of UCaaS to, right, can we sell all these other services on there? So where are those? Oh, sorry, last slide on this. This one's really interesting that from our latest research came out, we've been asking the service providers, where do you win your business from? And over the last 3 years, as you can see in 2021, 75% of the business was won from migrating on-premise solutions to UCaaS. Now in 2023, so this survey was completed 2 months ago, it was completed at the end of 2023 and the data came out last month. Just under 50% of those are now migrating from PBX to cloud. We're now seeing much more cloud-to-cloud migration, which means everyone in the room who sat there now needs to look at how they're going to diversify their product set, because everyone could end up looking the same. So making sure you have a really differentiated solution, making sure you're bundling other services together is going to be more and more important in the future. So where are these new market opportunities? Some of you would have seen this data. This is the second time we ran our enterprise study. 1,500 businesses we asked, what are your top 3 priorities for your communication solutions in the future? As you can see in the SMB space, a lot of it is around cost saving. They're looking at where they can cut costs, what they don't need to spend anymore. But number 2 throughout that is providing better customer services. They are all obsessed with how they can use customer service as a differentiator in the future. And we'll be touching on that in our session later when we're looking at the SME CX opportunity, both in one of our keynotes, but also with one of the panels from our team. When you move into the enterprise space, you see a lot more focus around AI. How can we as a business use AI to drive productivity, drive efficiency? How can we make it easier for our employees to communicate as well? And that's moving into collaboration as well, but AI is really starting on the trend there. If we focus on the CCaaS market, we've been doing a lot of research for the last 4 or 5 years, building up our knowledge in this space, and we've done a number of reports around this. What we see in the European markets is just under 1 million cloud contact center users out of a total base of 3 million contact center agents in the European market. Over the next 5 years, we're expecting CAGR in the CCaaS market to grow by 13%, so huge growth, up to just under $5.5 billion value over the next 5 years. As you can see, 33% CCaaS penetration into the agent base. But when you look at that SME opportunity, we believe it's only around 9%. It's a huge, huge space that we're seeing a lot of providers now trying to focus on. From a mobile perspective, we've been running our survey asking how many service providers think mobile and FMC is important to their customers. As you can see through here, 62% now believe it's important to have an FMC and a native mobile integrated solution as part of their product. That's up 25% from the last year. So more and more providers are looking at what they can do around this. For those who believe it's important in the future, that's up to 88%. So the majority of the providers we're speaking to think that mobile service is really important. We've looked at Operator Connect Mobile being launched, or Team Phone Mobile, being launched, WebEx Go being launched, the work that Tango's been doing to enable different mobile operators. Tango announced today that they're now offering roaming SIM in 14 different countries and enabling another 37 by the end of this year, with roaming as well, and by the end of this year. So go and see them and speak to them what about they're doing there. Really interesting to see that mobile story coming up. And as you can see from the graph on the left-hand side, we're predicting that over 18.5 million users will be using an FMC solution across Europe by the end of 2028. From an AI perspective, we've seen it from two different angles where we're looking at AI. Not only is it looking at how we're baking AI into our products, and we're seeing a lot of providers now either doing that or looking at doing that in the future, but also it's how we're using AI in the back end to really make sure our network's being optimized, get billing, get onboarding, get provisioning really working well, using AI in that, and using fraud as well. I think one of the biggest fears that we're seeing and biggest challenges we're seeing is how fraud is going to impact our industry. How can we make sure our voice lines are secure? How can we make sure that the person on the end of the line is the person we're speaking to? And I think that's a big challenge for everyone in the industry, is how can we make sure that's going to be something that we can do? And it's not individual companies going to do this right. It's going to be an industry-wide push for this, because we don't all want to get tarred with the same brush, and I think there's a lot of learning that we can all share and do around this to be successful. We're seeing a big focus around business messaging, and I get a lot of push. About 12 months ago, I was kind of looking at the business messaging market and going, is it that big? Is there a big opportunity here? And we, over the last year, I think worked on 5 or 6 different projects around business messaging. We've got a session later on looking at how that market's changing. But more and more businesses trying to use messaging in different ways to connect to their customers. It's becoming a more and more important part of customer communications, from airlines sending SMS, from WhatsApp being a core communication solution for multitude of different use cases as well. And across different markets as well, we see obviously messaging being used on different platforms, things like Viber, things like Telegram as well. How are we integrating those into our solutions? Because customers are starting to demand this happening because they're using them in their day-to-day lives. And from a network perspective as well, we're seeing a huge focus from the big telcos out there looking at how they can monetize their networks. They've put over $1 trillion of investment into their networks since 2018, mainly moving into that 5G era. But now they're struggling to monetize it. What can they do? We've seen a lot of focus from organizations such as Camera, looking at how they can expose network APIs and bring commercial APIs on top of that, and really start to leverage those networks which carriers have built to start to build new business models, start to offer new services on top. We've got a fascinating panel later today with the likes of Microsoft, BT, Vodafone, Momentum, talking around what they're doing around telco APIs and moving from kind of a telco to a techco. Really interesting conversation upcoming on that. So, what are we covering today? We kind of covered some of those top market things. We've got 6 keynotes Cavell going through today, touching on some of those core topics that we've gone through into more detail. But we've also got a huge range of different panels. So this morning, we're going to have a voice of the enterprise. So we've got 3 enterprise, one's just dropped out, coming up, talking around what are they looking for in a supplier, what are their challenges with technology, what are they building, and how does that all work? So Department of Work and Pensions, who everyone in the UK knows and loves. We've got M Group Services from the motorways, and we've got the RNIB, which is the Royal National Institute for the Blind, talking around how they're using technology and what they're looking for you guys to help provide there. We're then going to focus on AI. So we've got some AI demos coming in from the AIforia. We're looking at some of the trends in the market from our own research, and then a role of AI in future business communications, some of the key vendors around what they're doing with AI. Throughout the morning, we've also got industry visions from our gold sponsors. Fascinating to see what they're building, so please listen in and go and speak to them afterwards. In the afternoon, as Matt said, we're breaking into 3 separate tracks. And where we focus these tracks is really around the future of customer experience, so looking at how contact center, looking at how CX is changing and what that really looks like for the market. We're then also in the other room looking at growth strategies. So not only in new products, but where can we grow? What international markets can we go into? How do we do that successfully? What can we do from an inorganic perspective by buying different companies? How can we migrate from this telco to techco and build that through? So those growth strategies are really interesting. And one last bit that we've been working on a lot, and we got a lot of feedback from a number of events, is how to make these more interactive. So we set up these industry workshops. We've got space for about 40 people in each of those. So come along. It's interactive sessions. We got one focused around marketing. So what are comms providers getting on marketing? We've got some people from the SEO world and PR world talking around that. We've got Operator Connect Roundtable talking around how Operator Connectors are working. Is that successful or not? Where can you make money out of that in the future? We've got a fascinating talk around ESG and sustainability. 40% of the service providers we spoke to say the industry's not doing enough around ESG. So that is a really great group of people, from public companies to companies going through B Corp, looking at how they can really drive sustainability. And again, I think this is an industry-wide thing that we need to be working on. how do we benchmark this and do the best that we can through there. And finally, we've got a Women in Telecoms group as well, run by CC UK. Again, great to go and attend that if you can to talk through. The research you'll be hearing from Cavell are kind of focused on 5 key areas around cloud comms, customer experience, Microsoft Teams, our channel insights, and enterprise and SMB studies. So if you see any of our data coming out today, there will be kind of the 5 key areas that we're looking at, but also where the data is coming from. We've interviewed over 600 providers. We're tracking over 600 providers. We've interacted with over 850 providers in the last 12 months. And we've done tons of strategy consultings and M&A consulting projects, which it really gets us in-depth into the market, in-depth into what these people are doing. So we're not just sat you feeding us information, we're in there understanding what this is changing. So it'd be great to share some of those feedbacks. We've obviously got lots of enterprise studies out there as well, which if you hear us talking about enterprise studies, they're from our IT buyers, our contact center buyers, our Microsoft Teams buyers, and for the first time this year, we've got a study release, which Finbar will take you through later, on the consumers, how consumers are using CX, what do they expect, how well is that running, and some great insights that we've got throughout that. And finally, looking at the channel, our channel insights tool, we've got over 84,000 channel organizations globally of what they're selling, what vendors have they got in the solution, how that channel is changing. So if you hear us talking about different data, this is where it's all coming from. For those asking for the slides, we will be sharing the slides after. There will be a form coming out. Please give us your feedback so we can really understand what we can do better next year. But I'm going to hand over to our panelists with one final thank you from our sponsors. As Matt said, we can't do this without you guys. Please go and speak to them, work out how you guys can work together. There's a lot of value to be created with those guys, so a massive thank you to them. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Magnus from ZoomUp to come and give his first keynote, vision keynote. So over to Magnus. Thank you all very much. Look forward to seeing you today.